Marketing is about values.
Nike didn't call me and sell me this in a catalog. I bought this swoosh because it's ingrained in my soul.
When you have a product that really resonates with customers, the word of mouth grows like wildfire.
Welcome to the Marketing Max Show. Now, let's dive in.
All right, welcome back to the Marketing Max Show. You got Logan and Max here, as always, on a Friday. At least you're probably listening to this on a Friday. We enjoy being in your podcast feed or your YouTube feed. And today, I think Max has something new for us, fresh with the Knicks hat on, fresh off of their latest playoff win. Before we jump into that, though, we want to, as always, make a bet with you. If you're new to the show, we do this regularly. We make a bet for you. We've got 5 seconds where you can follow or subscribe to the show, and go ahead and do that in the next 5 seconds. And if by the end of this episode, you've got nothing, it's just total crap. You don't get anything of value from Max. I don't say anything worthwhile, which may happen. I don't know. That's why we're putting our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
You can unsubscribe, you can unfollow, and you can hit Max up at Marketing Max on X. You can hit me up at Logan Lyles on LinkedIn and let us know how bad the episode was and how happy you were to unsubscribe. So you got 5 seconds to take that bet or not. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, that was it. All right, Max, you got something for us today, man?
Yeah, well, last week I took my first coffee meeting in a very long time because I have a 3-month-old daughter and because I really don't take a lot of coffee meetings. I get asked to do them, on average, like everyone else that maybe has a decent following online. But I always say no. And I always say no because if you actually were to list out all of the coffee meetings or business lunch meetings you've ever had, my guess is you've wasted a lot more time than time that's been productive. So I kind of did that reconciliation a number of years ago and realized, like, unless the person runs a really cool business that I want to learn more about or know nothing about, or they're farther ahead of me and I can get something very specific out of the meeting, or I can help them and it's someone I want to help, then I'm not going to take it. Well, this guy runs one of the coolest businesses I've ever seen purchased from in my entire life. He reached out to me on Twitter and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in your area. Can we meet up?" And I said, "Absolutely. I would love to chat." Really cool dude. I can't give away the name of the company. They do about $11 million in sales, mostly through Instagram. I'm just a huge fan of his. And, he said at the end of the meeting, I guess one thing I really want to ask you, and we kind of uncovered each other's like war chest. Like I told him all the stuff I'm working on, all the details, how I think he can grow his business. He told me a lot of the details and the nuance and the numbers of his business, which is really unique. He's like, the one thing I really wanted to ask you was, like, out of everything that we talked about, where do most companies go wrong? Like, what are my blind spots? What am I not doing? You give me very tactical advice. Like, where do most companies go wrong? You're Marketing Max. It's so funny when people say that to me. I'm like, sometimes. But like, you're Marketing Max. Like, where do most people go wrong? What's like the biggest marketing mistake people make? And I said to him, like, marketing really comes down to 3 things. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast before, but I have a sticky note here underneath my screen. And it just has all 3 of these things written out. And every single time I create an ad, I write a post for social, I script out a video for someone on my team to send to a client, like whatever, everything comes back to these 3 things. I always try to keep in mind these 3 things, which is 1, outcomes. How can I speak more in the outcome of what this actually is? Don't ever say what the product is, what the service is. Say what the product or service will do for someone. Number 2 is frequency. How can I get in front of more people as often and as much as possible? And then number 3 is social proof, right? How can I add a testimonial to this email that I'm writing to a potential contact? How can I email this person 3 times in the next week because they told me they're interested in buying, but I don't want it to slip away and I don't want them to choose someone else. So I'm just going to stay top of mind. And then again, how can I speak in outcomes? And everything in marketing comes down to these 3 things. And to answer his question of what people get wrong, I think everyone gets all 3 of these wrong all the time. It's like the biggest mistake is your copy says what it is. your frequency is 1 or 2,
Mhm.
and then you have 0 social proof. You have 2
Yeah.
testimonials on your website, when in reality, like when you look at the biggest companies in the world, they spend so much time, so much energy, so much money on putting social proof in front of the customer. And it's B2B and B2C. It goes
Yeah.
back and forth. It doesn't matter which one it is. Creating as much social proof as you can, or I like to say farming for social proof, right? Testimonials, stats, whatever the number is, or whatever the actual thing is. People, when they make decisions, especially if it's an expensive decision, which you might think your product or service is not expensive, but to the people who are purchasing it, maybe it is, they want to feel like they're making the right decision. And the best way on planet Earth to make someone feel like they're making the right decision is to tell people other people made that same decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And to show them people that look like them. And I'm not talking about necessarily gender or skin color or stuff like that, but
Yeah.
phase of life, their outlook, you know, where they live, different things that they can identify with that person. Because I remember this early in my sales career of putting the wrong social proof in front of a right fit client. But I was talking about social proof from a really big company that we worked with, and they were a small business. And so I hadn't farmed for enough applicable social proof for that type of client. And that's where I realized, like, this consistent farming, it needs to be exactly that. It needs to be consistent. One of the best things that I did where we saw some lift in how much social proof we were getting was kind of getting out of our own way and doing it more organically when I was in-house at a SaaS company called teamwork.com. And I found out about this tool. They were actually acquired by Typeform. It's called Video Ask. You can create a form just like on Typeform, but it's meant for video. Like you record a video and then that gives them the option to also record a video back. So I recorded them saying, hey, just saw that you left a great comment with one of our CSRs. Would you mind recording 30 seconds on camera? Don't worry. If you slip up, you can start over. And we realized you have to give some framing to it of like, tell us what was life like before, after. Are there any numbers you can point to, right? Tying in the outcomes with the social proof. And we went from like, oh, we do one case study a quarter, writing these big long blog posts that no one ever read, to getting these videos very quickly that we could turn around. We could use in ads. We could put in different places on the website. So that's one story that comes to mind, and like farming for social proof. I like the way you said that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people who have heard it, who listen to this podcast might have heard of this influencer named Justin Welsh. He's pretty popular on LinkedIn. I think he has easily more than 1 million or more than 2 million followers across all social platforms. Right. But his whole business is he sells essentially a $200 course about how to grow on LinkedIn, and his content that he posts to get all of those multi-millions of followers is what I call entrepreneur porn, if you will. I probably shouldn't say that, although this is a podcast, so we can say anything. But it's basically things that make people feel inspired, or that make people feel confident that they can actually be a solopreneur, which is what he is. That's like his tagline: become a solopreneur. I want to make $2 million a year without any employees, without any call meetings, whatever. And he's doing it 100%.
Solid outcome-based tagline there, by the way.
Solid outcome-based tagline. Good point. But one of the things, I took his course many years ago. I don't even think he's updated it. He's come out with a couple more courses or products. But one of the things that I loved, watch what the big players do. Don't always listen exactly to what they say. Like Gary Vee says this a lot, but he didn't talk about this in his course. But about 14 or 30 days after I bought the course, an email came from some third-party tool that he's using. It wasn't the video one that you mentioned, but it was another one that said, hey, would you mind writing a quick testimonial about your experience with the course and any outcomes that you've had with it?
Yeah.
And like the more that you could kind of automate that farming process, whether it's a Zap using one of these third-party tools, it's like, hey, you've been a client now for 15 days or 3 months or whatever it is. You purchased our water bottle. How are you feeling? Like the more you can automate it, the better. And a little pro tip here for those of you that are listening, you are totally allowed to encourage people to say what you think will be most effective to your target customer. Logan, you said something that made me think of this. You know, if you know that your target customer is not just dentist offices for whatever it is that you sell, but it's specifically the nurse. I don't know if that's the right term or whatever, but like, you know, ask them to say, you know, I'm a nurse at XYZ and I've always struggled to find the right toothbrush or whatever. Once we switch to loganstoothbrushes.com,
I need to go buy that domain right now.
right now. Once we switch to Logan's Toothbrushes, you know, our customers were 3x happier in their survey that we sent them 14 days after, because we automated it, because we listened to Marketing Max's podcast. See, everything comes full circle. But
It's so meta on the show.
so meta. But you are totally allowed to ask people to say, hey, can you just mention your job title, or can you mention that, like, you were, like, if you know a lot of your clients are currently struggling, or a lot of your ideal customers or users or clients are currently struggling with X, ask the people in their testimonials or in their case studies or in their video to say, man, I was really struggling to find a solution for X. And then when your lead, the person who's considering downloading your app or whatever, reads that, right? They're going to say, oh, I'm struggling with that too, right? A fisherman always spots another fisherman from afar. Like, I'm struggling with that too. And you solved it by hiring or by purchasing Logan's Toothbrushes. Like, oh, maybe that'll work for me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the social proof angle that I was talking about, where it's really important to kind of validate, let people know, like, hey, it's okay. You know, from that famous scene in Mad Men, all people want at the end of the day is just to know that they're okay. People want a billboard on the side of the road that just screams, whatever you're doing is okay. Right? The decision that you're about to make, hire Max's team to do your lead gen, is a good decision, because here's 20 testimonials of other people who made that decision and then found a bunch of success with it and grew their business on the back of it.
Yeah, man, it's so good, because oftentimes people don't have enough social proof, because one, they're not asking for it. They haven't built the automated systems like you were talking about, but then they go and ask clients or they ask customers for it, and either they don't get it or it's not that impactful, because they say the things that sound like everybody else. And I've been in sales trainings where it was like, stand up, give your elevator pitch. And everybody's like, we really care about our customers here. And we're, you know, a great culture and we have great service. And it's like, oh crap, everybody sounds exactly the same. Your customers in their testimonials are going to sound like every other testimonial unless you prompt them. And they might not respond because they just get analysis paralysis of like, I don't know what to say. You've got to remove the friction for them, right? And so think about maybe the previous episode where we were talking about, I think, 7 different LinkedIn ad formats. We can drop that one in the show notes if you missed that one. But here's an idea: like, take those ad formats that Max and I talked about and think about, how can I reverse engineer those and prompt my customers to give me their testimonials in formats that will work for that. Like, you don't have to, you know, have them do a fully scripted ad, but you could tell them the elements, right? And then you can edit it and you can, you know, make it punchier, that sort of thing. So
that's so smart. I love that. I would not have thought about that. That's why you're the co-host, Logan. Go back and listen to the 7 ad frameworks.
Yeah.
LinkedIn or Meta ads, but the 7 ad frameworks. And then, I mean, there was one really good one about the hero's journey, right? Like, make your customer the hero in the journey. And they used your tool to help them accomplish the really big goal that they couldn't figure out or couldn't accomplish without you, no matter what your product or service is.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're thinking about farming for more social proof, that's going to be stuck in my head all week now. And then using that on your website, in your ads, those sorts of things, just think, how can I make this person giving me this testimonial look like a hero? And we're the guide. I've got a buddy who's doing a lot of great content around AI and marketing right now. His name's Dan Sanchez. You can look him up. He actually goes by Danchez. Check him out at danchez.com. I love that nickname, and it's just so catchy. I'm like, I need one of those, and I have an alliterative name, but you know, I don't have the Marketing Max or the Danchez. Anyway, side note, he's been saying on some of his LinkedIn Logan.
Lead gen Logan.
Okay, there we go. Maybe I need to buy that domain too. But anyway, where I was going with that is, like, in some of Dan's posts, he's been like kind of talking up the marketers that he's trying to speak to and offer AI consulting to and stuff like that. And he's like, AI is the cape, you are the hero. Like, you're the superhero, AI is just the cape. And it's like speaking to this fear of marketers that I'm going to be replaced by AI, but I want to be the hero. Like, I want to be the one driving leads. I want to be, promoted to CMO, that sort of stuff. So I was picturing some of his posts in what you were talking about there in making the customer the hero, both the one who's going to see the social proof, but also the person who's sharing the social proof, which can be hard because it's kind of like, oh, give us a testimonial and tell us how great we are. That's if you use those ad frameworks to kind of prompt your customers, you might get a better result.
Yeah. Another pro tip on that front before we wrap this segment up, because I feel like we might be beating this one dead, is oftentimes what we used to do at my old agency is we would share 3 or 4 testimonials that other people wrote when we asked a new client for a testimonial. So
I like that.
2 reasons to do that. Number one, to your point just now, right? People are like spoon fed. Here's what to say. Here's something someone else has said. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just put your own spin on these 3 other testimonials that we got.
Feels safer for them too, right? Like, oh, other people have done this. I like, there's
Exactly my second point. It's social proof to get people to do social proof. You and I, we think alike, man. That's the whole point of this. But, or maybe it's not the whole point. But yeah, it gives people social proof that what they're doing, they're also joining other people doing it, right? It's social proof to get people to give you social proof. And so like, it's one of those things where I talk a lot at conferences about social proof, and I talk a lot about these specific 3 things. That's why I'm not sure if we ever mentioned on the podcast: outcomes, frequency, and social proof. And people are always like, Max, I have testimonials on my website, but I don't think they make a difference. And if I have a screen, I'll pull up, what's your website? And they're shy. I'm like, no, you volunteered this. What's your website?
You're on the hot seat now.
And I type in their website, and I'm like, okay, you have 3 testimonials buried at the bottom. They're 2 paragraphs long. There's no bullet, or there's no, bold, underline, italicized to make it skimmable, right? And you have 3. See what your conversion rate is today. Add 10. Put it higher. Call me in 30 days to see if your conversion rate goes up at all. Systematically, every single time, it does. Every single time. You cannot do, like, I've had some clients before say, isn't 10 testimonials too many? Like, you can't have too many testimonials, case studies. You want an overwhelming amount. For my own agency, we had that tagline: we help companies make $4 for every dollar they spend on digital ads. And at the bottom of the website was this little page called Proof. And when you landed on Proof, there were 30 examples with a logo of the company, with a link to their website, and the exact ROI that we drove for them after 90 days.
Yeah.
Exact ROI. We had like 30. This company, we got to 4.7. This company, we got to 16. This company, we got to 2.7. This company, the more proof, the better, right? We got, especially in B2B, you make a claim. We can help you get 4X, or we can generate a bunch of leads for you. And then you have to prove that you can do that.
Yeah. People need to see the receipts, man. Trust is at an all-time low. So I would say of these 3, I know you said it's like equal and it's always been the same, but I would say, and maybe that's why you and I are kind of harping on this one of the 3 the most, is like we feel it in our bones that like if you're not providing an obnoxious amount of social proof, then you're not doing enough. Because I feel like some of the landing pages that have really convinced me, I've even been like, dang, like this is a bit much, bro. Like, but I'm like, but this is actually, what's most compelling. Cause I'm like, I'm not ready to bounce, but I'm not ready to click. And I scroll and there's another review and there's another, video, that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Awesome, man. Well,
I think where you were going to go with that is like, what's the one out of the 3? Maybe it's you're about to say, like, I know you mentioned all 3. In my mind, they get harder as you go down the list. Like, the easiest thing to do is just to change your copy on your website and in your ads to the outcome.
Yep.
That's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. If you take one thing away from this episode, do that. Yep. Number 2 is frequency.
Get that message about outcomes in front of people more often. More people more often, right?
Exactly. Send more emails. Retarget people who visit on your website. Literally $5 a day retargeting. That's it. And then social proof. Yeah, you got to collect it. It's not the easiest.
Yeah.
But then that comes right back to the second point, which is frequency. Hammer those testimonials, those case studies, whatever, hammer that home with Facebook ads, hammer it home with drip sequences after an email. Or
Yep.
sorry, with drip sequences in email
Yeah,
after a
email.
sales call.
Yep.
Like when you get off a sales call, you should have something triggered where every other day it's going to be a different case study, a different testimonial until whenever that next scheduled follow-up touch point is, or call, or demo, or whatever it is.
Dude, I've even got some work to do in that. That's a really good point. I'm not doing that enough in my own sales cycle for our agency. I like what you said about like starting from the top, the outcomes, then the frequency, then the social proof, because I'll provide this for free for anybody who's a listener of the show. Just hit me up on LinkedIn and send me a DM. Let me know you heard this on the podcast. But I took this prompt and we made a custom GPT out of it that takes Ogilvy's, was it 15 copywriting principles for advertising, and it will analyze your homepage and give you a score 1 out of 100. And the thing that I'm noticing is a lot of websites I've been putting through this, they're like 40 to 60 out of 100, like failing grades. And the number one thing is that it's not outcome based. And this prompt will actually rewrite your homepage for you and give you some suggestions. So if you want me to run it through our custom GPT, send me a note on LinkedIn, send me a connection request. Or if you just want the prompt and you want to use it, I'll send you the text for the prompt too. So
you should hire someone to make that like a SaaS, like just wrap a user interface around it.
Oh, dude,
That's
we can
sick.
spin that up in Replit or Lovable pretty quickly. We should do that.
Good. It could be an afternoon project.
I know what I'm doing for the rest of it.
And then and then in order to get the results, you have to punch in your email, verify your email, and then you get the results. And then you could email, hey, do you want a new website? We'll sell you a new website.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have time for the second thing?
I think we can talk 5 minutes.
Okay. So the other thing that I got for you today, have you heard of the brand bank analogy from Steve Jobs?
I think I know where you're going with this, but not necessarily. So enlighten me as
I
usual.
saw some video that I verified is not AI. Of Steve Jobs saying he thinks of brand as a bank.
Okay.
You can make deposits and you can make withdrawals. And you can run up a huge debt in your bank account if you keep asking for things, but you need to make sure that you are actually making deposits in the brand bank account or the brand trust bank account.
Okay.
So
I
wrote,
what would be an example of a withdrawal and what would be an example of a deposit?
so withdrawal is sending an email saying like, hey, here's 20% off. Go ahead and buy our product today. Or we just lowered our prices, book a sales call or book a demo call. Anytime you ask for a purchase, anytime you ask someone to do something, that is a withdrawal. You're withdrawing money from your brand trust account. A deposit is a podcast listen. A deposit is email that you send that maybe has a small call to action at the bottom. Hey, if you want help with this, click below, but it's value driven.
It's a newsletter, right?
It's a newsletter. It's a podcast. It's an event that you host where you bring your target customers together. It could be as simple as an ad that's not so purchasey, right? It could be like, I was struggling with XYZ. Now I solved this. It doesn't necessarily like feel like an ask, right, in an ad. And so I just thought this was such a clever way to think about what you and I are always talking about on this show, which is frequency is the most important thing in building brand trust. 2% of your market is ready to buy today. 98% of your market isn't. And so if you keep making a withdrawal, as Steve Jobs would call it, keep asking people to purchase, you're diminishing your brand and you're racking up debt. You're not building trust with them, right? You're not investing and saving money so that when you are ready to actually ask, then you can ask.
Yeah. Two things come to mind here, and they're actually both tied to Gary Vee. So one, it reminds me of I think it was one of his earlier books, Jab, Jab, Right Hook, right? And there's similar analogy here. Jab is you're adding value, right? And the right hook is the ask. It's the CTA. I like the deposit versus withdrawal because like with a jab and a right hook, you're still punching someone in the face. So maybe the analogy, I think the deposit and withdrawal analogy lines up a little better, but where you can see like the same thinking, the same methodology in Gary Vee's approach, right? Like for most of his career, like he's made most of his money with his big VaynerMedia clients, right? Like most entrepreneurs, he's not getting rich off of that. Just like Alex Hormozi, like he sells books, but it's acquisition.com and the businesses that he's acquiring where he's making a lot of his money now, right? And I remember this line from Gary Vee. He's like, I think when he dropped a new book or a new shoe or something, he's like, I show up in your feed and add value. And every 6 years I drop a new shoe or book and ask you to buy it. So sue me. And like, that is the example of like depositing before you make that withdrawal. And a lot of brands, unfortunately, they hear us talk about frequency and they're like, sweet. And they just go to town asking. But if you back up and listen to Max talking about frequency earlier, put that in context of what we're talking about here. Frequency doesn't just mean withdrawals. It needs to be the right combination of deposits and withdrawals. And there's some gray area in between. Like, hey, here's we're doing a webinar. Maybe you're asking them to take another step down your funnel. And so that's kind of a withdrawal. But if it's really valuable, then maybe it is seen as a deposit. And so that's where you got to look at the quality of your content, the quality of, your marketing to see, am I doing something that I think is a deposit, but it's actually viewed as a withdrawal? There's some gray area in there. So I'm rambling now.
I was just pulling up. So I wrote about this in my weekly newsletter this past Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a great analogy, or what I think is a great analogy. Shouldn't compliment myself. Although I was just watching a video. This is a total side note. It was this really funny comedian on Instagram or TikTok. And she's like, I don't understand why people say not to toot my own horn. Girl, if you're not going to toot your own horn, who's going to toot your own horn? Or who's going to toot your horn? Like, you need someone to toot your horn. You got to start with you. I love that. But anyways, I had this good analogy. Okay, so every ad you run is like tossing a quarter into your brand's trust account. Every organic social post is a $1 bill. Every email you send, it should be every email newsletter you send, is a $50 bill. And every podcast episode, long form YouTube video, influencer shout out, that's a fat $100 bill going into your brand's bank vault. And so if you sell skincare, right? Mm-hmm. You could run ads all day saying, buy our skincare. Here's 3 reasons to buy our skincare. But if you post a YouTube video, simply just explaining, here's 3 ingredients to look out for that should not be in the skincare products that you purchase. And that's the whole video. And it's at the end, brought to you by LoganSkinCream.com or whatever. You're coming up with a lot of e-commerce brands.
I'm selling some stuff.
Toothbrush and but like, brought to you by Logan's, facecream.com or whatever. Face or more, whatever. You do have really good skin, by the way. But
this is taking a weird turn. This is why
we're going back. We're gonna get back on the road. But if you just provide value, like, hey, here are 3 things that shouldn't be in your thing. It shouldn't be in your skincare products, provided or brought to you by whatever company. That's a $100 bill, because you're not coming out the gate saying, hey, you don't need these 3 things. Our product doesn't have these 3 things. Buy our product now. You're just coming out the gate and leading with value and depositing that $100 bill into your brand's trust bank account. And I just thought that was such a good way to think about the jab, right hook, as Gary Vee would explain it, or the frequency as I explain it, the building the trust. It's just so valuable.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Well, hopefully you have gotten value out of this if you've been watching or listening to us for the last half hour, other than, knowing what sort of e-commerce brands that I'm about to start and Max is going to be an investor in, brought to you by Logan and Max. Also, side note, my kids and I were watching kind of old jingles from cartoons they used to watch. We've joked about how, it blows your mind every time I tell you I got 2 teenagers, but they're old enough to look at cartoons that they used to watch. And there's this one called Max and Ruby that was like on Nick Jr. or something. Yeah. And it's like got this old jingle to it. I'm like, maybe we need to come up with a Max and Logan jingle. So if we come up with an e-commerce brand brought to you by Max and Logan, expect that. Anyhow, all of that aside, hopefully you got some laughs at me and Max being dorks today, but I hope you truly got some value. You'll stay subscribed, and that 5-second bet was worth it. So stay subscribed, keep following, and we will see you next week. Max, good luck to your Knicks, and we'll see how the Nuggets fare against the Thunder later tonight. I don't know, man.
Go Knicks. See you guys on Twitter and Spotify and YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else that these things are posted on. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Max show. It takes me and my team hours to produce it every single week, but it only takes you 15 seconds to hit that share button and text it to a friend, drop it in a Slack group, or share it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or any of your favorite social platforms. I appreciate you taking the time to check out my content. Have an awesome day.